This is an exclusive excerpt from the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Historian David O'Keefe is back on the program, the author of several books, including 7 Days in Hell, which tells the epic story of the men from the Black Watch during a bloody World War II battle, is back on the show to answer a hypothetical question that I have. In addition to being a history professor, David is also a television producer and a documentarian. He joins us via Skype from right here in Montreal. Hi, Dave.
Hello, Peter. How are you?
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for doing this. You know, I thought that with your credentials that you were the perfect person to ask this question to, despite the fact that for decades, dare I say 2 generations, you've been trying to cheat me out of players in trades for Stratomatic Baseball, but that's a topic for another day.
Well, this is true. Yeah.
If we had the media, social media, and technology of today during World War II, could we have pulled off D-Day? And the reason I asked that question is because last week I was watching all of the press conferences, the official press conferences when they were trying to evacuate Afghanistan, and I heard questions that reporters were asking, and I was thinking, why is the military answering these questions?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I mean, the relationship with the media and the military has always been a really delicate dance. Generally speaking, the media will play ball to a certain degree with the media as long as they feel it is for the common enemy and not deceiving their own people at home. And the military will be more than willing to go ahead and feed the media whatever it is they feel is appropriate for, say, deception operations. And they use a whole wide range of them. But open source that you would get through the media, surprisingly, is quite important in intelligence work. It's not the defining hand, but it does something. You know, it certainly rounds out the picture in some cases. So the militaries have always had an eye on slipping disinformation through various, outlets. And, to get to your point, I actually think that not only would we have pulled it off, but it may have actually even been easier in the day of social media.
Why do you think it would have been easier?
Well, I just think the volume and the fact that everybody seems now to be migrating to it. Now, of course, you would have professional intelligence on the other side who would be able to sift through a lot of this, but the ability to pin your opponent to a different location than where you were going to land, or better yet, divide his attention. And that was the big success with D-Day, because they had the Germans guessing. Would they come ashore in Normandy? Would they come ashore around Brittany? Would they come ashore at the Pas-de-Calais? The idea was kind of to divide and conquer, if you will. In other words, remove their level of certainty so they could not concentrate their forces and drive the Allies back into the sea. And to do that, you tap into every source. And they were using newspapers back then. So you can imagine now, with the power of social media, how the frequency and the volume of material that could be disseminated would now be able to touch everywhere. And they could really start baffling the Germans, if you will, on a scale that they probably only dreamed about in World War II.
So, in other words, sort of like a social media shell game?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you would bombard them everywhere. You would be talking about, things that were going on up in Norway and Pas-de-Calais and, all the areas that you want to sort of draw the attention of the Germans to, and including, sprinkle in a little bit of Normandy, because, sometimes if you do not give a certain area airplay, that's where your opponent will focus in on. In other words, conspicuous by its absence. So you would sprinkle it in, but the volume, the reach that you could have now would have been absolutely extraordinary. And it would have been one of the most baffling shell games of all time for the Germans.
So again, I don't know if you were watching any of the press conferences, the daily press conferences that the military was having in the State Department. But again, I kept hearing questions, and I understand what it's like being in a scrum, being in an official news scrum. I've been in situations where I've asked questions that I just quite frankly hope to God nobody actually answers. Because
Well, it may not necessarily be the questions, but I think really what the concern would be the answers coming out of the spokesman for the military.
well, that's exactly what I was thinking about, because I mean I heard the questions being asked, and I was just sitting there going, why are you answering this in what appears to be such detail?
Well, there's a couple of ways to look at it, and we're speaking hypothetically, so let's have some fun with this. Let's say that, first of all, anybody who's getting up and speaking on behalf of the military has been briefed 7 ways to Sunday about how to handle the media in this day and age. So one would assume that anything coming out of their mouth is been well thought out. So if these questions are coming in and they have a chance to field them, it's either two things. Either the questions have already been fed to the media and the media has been asked to ask them, or they're taking advantage of them, and largely for deception purposes. Because if you think about it, all the media was focused on the airport in Kabul. But there must be 150 different ways to get people out of Afghanistan. So the idea would be, if you're trying to deceive the Taliban, who are not necessarily known for sophisticated strategic intelligence, if you will, they're pretty good locally on the ground, they're going to be using open source. So in other words, they're going to be watching the media as well. So whatever is coming out of the mouth of the military is likely designed to throw them off the scent, if you will. In other words, focus them on the airport. Meanwhile, you're sneaking people out in a whole series of different avenues. But the problem with that, of course, is, the stuff from World War I and World War II, when it comes to deception, the documents, the plans, they're still classified all these years later. So it may be that, you and I are long gone before any of this actually is revealed.
So you've alleviated my fears from what I was watching last week. I feel a lot better now.
Well, it could be incompetence, too.
Yeah, there's always that.
There's always that.
Before I let you go, I also know that you're working on another project, which is just about to be released. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's the first, what I would consider to be the first serious investigation. We're doing it for History Channel in the United States, and it is part of History's Greatest Mysteries, which debuts September 7th on History Channel in the United States, and it's hosted by Lawrence Fishburne, and we are looking into the disappearance of Flight 19, the flight of torpedo bombers that disappeared 3 months after the end of World War II off the coast of Florida around Fort Lauderdale. We're never seen again. And of course, this started the entire Bermuda Triangle mystery. So we're the part of the investigation team that is going offshore and on land to see if we can find the aircraft.
So I've already seen some trailers about this. And as you say, there is an offshore and on-land part of it. There's also a part where they actually go down below. And if I'm not mistaken, from at least the trailer I've seen, they find a bomber, but a lot of bombers went down, not just the ones that they were looking for. So this could be an entirely different situation.
Well, yes, definitely it could be, because a lot of people don't realize that Florida was the largest U.S. Navy aviation training center during the Second World War. So you have something roughly around 350 different wrecks of all different types of aircraft, whether it be on land or offshore. And so, when we got into this, we definitely were looking for 5 tiny needles in a massive haystack. And then, of course, our 5 needles are also, joined out there by about 345 others. So the odds of doing this are up there with, alien abduction, even though we don't get into that. So.
I know you don't want to give anything away. You want people to watch this show, but during the process of trying to uncover this information, did you have any aha moments?
Oh, I think a few of them. I think part of it was taking a look at the entire, what we call historiography. The history of this story has been so filled with holes. It's Swiss cheese. And I think one of the problems is when we go back and take a look at the narrative that we've known up until this point, it really is on a series of shaky pillars. And I guess the big aha moment was, we really have to go back to the drawing board and we have to rebuild the beast. And that's essentially what we're doing in the show.
Wow, fascinating indeed. Again, the show is
History's Greatest Mysteries on History Channel in the U.S. It'll eventually be up in Canada, but right now just in the U.S.
great. So History's Greatest Mysteries. And again, thank you very much for sharing the information, the hypothetical situation as to the information that gets given out to the press by generals. Because again, I found that to be a whole fascinating situation. David, thank you very much for being on the program with us once again.
Oh, thank you, Peter.
Military historian David O'Keefe, author of 7 Days in Hell. As he also mentioned, he is part of the series History's Greatest Mysteries, hosted by Lawrence Fishburne for the History Channel. Check your local listings. And you can go to my website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0630, and you'll find links to either amazon.com or amazon.ca, where you can order David's book directly.
You've just heard an exclusive excerpt from the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. To hear any or all of the full hour-long shows, visit thestuffile.com. Stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's thestuffile.com. A presentation of Flying Fish Communications.